We got a lot of big news to cover today, but we should first give you an update on our whole monetization situation.
Obviously the most important news.
So at the end of our previous episode this week, we talked about how our videos weren't being monetized anymore, and all of our YouTube memberships were paused due to some trouble that we were having verifying our AdSense account, which is a very annoying and opaque process. We had absolutely no clue when or if this would be resolved. But holy crap, you guys really came in clutch, just when we needed you. Mm-hmm. Our Patreon and Ko-fi accounts saw a huge influx of donations, more than enough money to make it not feel like we're just doing our job for free. So thank you immensely to everyone who stepped up. But update, we're still not exactly sure how or why, but our AdSense account just got reactivated on Tuesday, so we're all good.
Yeah, they still haven't paid us for a couple of months. It's just sitting there in limbo. But
6 months.
We'll hopefully
6 months.
That'll get sent over soon, and then I'll know for sure that everything's fine. But yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, so our videos are monetized once again. Channel memberships are active once again. Crisis averted.
But that wasn't all of the good news this week. We do have good news to get to you today. It's gonna be awesome.
Some good, some bad.
Well, yeah, of course, but at least a little bit of good is always great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the biggest news of the week, Kamala Harris has finally made her selection for her running mate. And despite the pundits and columnists all insisting that Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was a stone cold lock and you would be anti-Semitic if you didn't think so, you weirdos. The winner was actually Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a dark horse who most people weren't even aware of a month ago, who was seen as the more progressive choice. He was also our pick for who should get it, and it feels great that in just the past month, we've gotten our way twice. What do they say to the guy who all of a sudden got everything he wanted? He lived happily ever after.
I'd like some more, please. That's what I say.
And of course, the first one was when Biden finally agreed to not seek re-election and instead hand the reins over to Kamala Harris. And now second, when Kamala picked a VP candidate who, by Democratic Party standards, actually seems like a really chill, normal, salt-of-the-earth guy. Which is always good, but especially when the VP candidate on the other ticket is as viscerally off-putting as J.D. Vance. So, who is this Tim Walz? Well, let's first just get a sense of him from his first speech as the nominee at a rally Tuesday in Philadelphia where the 14,000-seat venue appeared packed to the gills with excited supporters. Here you go.
I was born in West Point, Nebraska. I lived in Butte, a small town of 400, where community was a way of life. Growing up, I spent the summers working on the family farm. My mom and dad taught us, show generosity towards your neighbors and work for a common good. The National Guard gave me purpose. It gave me the strength of a shared commitment to something greater than ourselves. And just as it did for my dad and millions of others, the GI Bill gave me a shot at a college education. My dad was a teacher. My brothers and sisters and I followed in their footsteps. 3 out of 4 of us married teachers. What we do. For nearly 20 years, I had the privilege of teaching high school social studies and coaching football, including winning that state championship. Thank you. Some of us are old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. And when somebody tells you you are, they believe him. He said he'd ban abortion across this country, and he'll do it, whether or not Congress is there or not. Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends. And I got to tell you, his running mate shares his dangerous and backward agenda for this country. J.D. Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, J.D. studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there? I just have to say it. You know it, you feel it. These guys are creepy, and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see. That's what you see. So you know what's out there, so say it with me. We aren't going back. We aren't going back. So we got 91 days. My God, that's easy. We'll sleep when we're dead.
Okay, so first off, the vibes. They are immaculate. For a party that is seen as being the party of coastal elites, Tim Walz's Midwestern dad vibes project the sort of relatability and authenticity that Trump and Vance could only dream of. Also Kamala.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is definitely that despite being a politician for the past 18 years, Tim Walz doesn't seem like one of those freaks who had all their political ambitions figured out by high school. He's the first person on a Democratic ticket since Jimmy Carter to not attend law school. And his career path before entering Congress in 2006 was as a public school teacher and a member of the Army National Guard. As a high school geography teacher, he also coached the school's football team. And in just 3 years, the team went from a totally winless season, 0 wins, to being state champions. And it sounds like everyone that he taught, coached, and worked with during his years as a teacher have only kind words to say about him. Here's NBC News.
He was probably one of the most well-liked teachers in the school while he taught there, said Katie Heinz, 41, who had Walz as a teacher her junior year of high school and is now the director of a library in the area. His lectures on topics like history and government have stuck with her to this day, she said. He really taught both sides of everything, she said. He wasn't pushy about, right or left or whatever. He was also an influential assistant coach who mentored students beyond the field and helped lead the football team to a state championship. Both Walz and his wife, Gwen Walz, worked at Mankato West, and Tracy Frederick Cochran, 41, took classes with both of them. Between Tim and Gwen, those were two people in the high school that were always there for students, she said. Both Tim and Gwen had this magic of helping you see possibilities and potential in yourself that maybe you didn't actually know was there. God! God! He literally represents like any actual good father figure that's missing from anyone's life. Even if you have a father in your life, I saw a lot of people compare this to, because people are jumping on people like, oh, I would love for this guy. He seems like a guy that could teach you how to change your spark plug or whatever. And
he has videos he's posted showing how to do shit on his car.
I saw people kind of saying that a lot of people are desperate for this type of almost parasocial connection because their parents used to be somewhat normal before their brains were rotted by Fox News and the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So they're reminiscent of a time where they actually enjoyed their parents' company.
Yeah, I mean, he is like the default middle American male. He's Hank Hill.
Yeah.
But a little more open-minded.
And from a northern state. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here's USA Today with more. I was a C-ish student in high school, Noah Hobbs wrote on X ahead of the Harris campaign's official announcement. Mr. Walz took the time to make sure that I was successful, not only in his class, but others. He made learning exciting. The now governor had a reputation for being the fun and favorite teacher, even by those who didn't have him for history class. Everybody liked Mr. Walz, said Emily Scott, who did not have Walz for a teacher, but remembers him leading their school trip to China when she was 17. Scott said Walz, who was also a lunchroom supervisor, acted as a bridge between the student cliques. There were jocks that did football. There were history nerds like me that wanted to go to China, Scott said. Debate and speech nerds, band nerds. And Mr. Walz stood in the middle of all that and was pretty much universally beloved. When a student at Mankato West wanted to start their school's first gay-straight alliance club in 1999, Walz agreed to be the group's faculty advisor. It really needed to be the football coach, who was the soldier and was straight and was married, Walz said of his role in a 2018 Star Tribune article.
And yeah, it's so funny because when J.D. Vance gets announced, people come out of the woodwork and they're like, yeah, nobody knows what's up with this guy. He's totally weird and has also flipped on all of his values
all of his
times.
views are things that he decided to believe in 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. People that went to college with him are like, yeah, I don't know what's up with this guy.
Yeah, and also everyone from back home, they're like, yeah, J.D. Vance kind of shit on everyone he grew up around.
Yeah.
And blamed all of our problems on our own lack of grit.
Oh my God, did you see the very softball question he was...
Yeah, why should people want to have a beer with you?
Okay, well, two things. The other question, the one that really made me feel awkward, it was...
Oh, what do you smile about?
Yeah, give us an example of something
you
that makes you happy.
What makes you smile? What makes you happy?
Well, I smile at a lot of things, including bogus questions from the media, man.
And to not have any
not be able to
response?
say my wife and kids or
or
like, I
an
don't know,
activity that I enjoy,
sucking
or,
down a chili dog behind the Tasty Freeze.
or consuming any type of like media or a sports team or just any answer at all.
That was
Mowing the
weird.
lawn, petting a dog, doing anything.
Very easy question to answer if you are normal.
Instead, he like fired back at the reporter who gave him the easiest possible question.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one that you said?
They asked him like, it was something about wanting to have a beer with him, and he was like, he just like stuttered for a minute. It's like, well, cause I like beer.
Why would people in Wisconsin want to have a beer with you?
Well, I guess they'd want to have a beer with me because I actually do like to drink beer, and
So
I like drinking beer.
obviously an awkward answer to that question, but that kind of aligns with when people say they want to learn something from Walz. It's almost like I want to have a beer with this person, except normal people, they don't have to have a beer with them.
Yeah, and I just want to like highlight here, like, I mean, we talk about how teachers are underappreciated in this country.
Yeah.
It is a difficult fucking job. It's a job I would never do myself because you're underpaid, you're overstretched, and it's just hard enough like actually teaching kids to be able to not only teach them but have them like really like you
And respect
is
you,
like
yeah.
very, very rare. We've all been in high school and like, yeah, you had dozens of teachers. You can probably think of like one or two where you're like, that person was cool and I actually learned stuff. And that is a very special set of skills.
It's going to be truly a gift having those skills translate to dealing with the Republicans in the government.
Yeah.
Imagine like you dealing with high school kids and then having to deal with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like,
Making them learn something.
yes.
Well, now, Marjorie, you're not mad at the government.
You're frustrated at
What
yourself.
are you mad about?
Anyways, that's of course a small sample of the kind of testimonials that he's getting, but other testimonials from his former football players paint a picture of basically the ideal coach.
Yeah, like a coach from like the movies, the coach from Friday Night Lights.
And that's why I think they're leaning into the calling him coach thing. They said that he led with kindness and compassion and pushed the players to work hard without being a dick.
yeah, he'd yell at us, but like in a way where like he was like cheering us on.
Yeah. So he seems like a good dude. And yeah, these traits definitely translate to electability. Just look at him around people. I was talking about this yesterday. There is such a clear divide right now between the two parties, specifically within the past 2 weeks. But where you look at what's happening with the Democratic Party specifically right now with the picks that have been made, and you see generally, for the first time in a long time, hope and joy. And then you look at what J.D. Vance and Trump, just taking them at face value right now, is dark, gloomy, and sad.
Yeah. And it is, Walz, I think he fills a little bit of the role, I don't want to compare them too much, but the role that Joe Biden played in 2020, where like, say what you will about the guy, but 2020 Joe Biden could go into like a diner or something and
Act like a normal person.
like endless photos of him like hanging out and like getting along with people. Like he did have that going for him.
Yeah.
Probably not so much anymore, but it's important in a candidate that you're able to do that.
So again, he seems like a good dude. The traits, very nice. But why did Kamala go with Walz when Shapiro seemed like the favorite? Well, here's some selections from a CNN article about exactly that question. Asked how he saw his role as VP, Walz said he would perform the job however Harris wanted him to. Asked if he wanted to be the last person in the room before Harris made a decision, Walz said only if she wanted him to be there. And asked if he had ambitions to run for president himself one day, Walz said he did not. A point that sources said was not lost on a team looking to minimize the potential for any internal drama in a future Harris administration. He had a very clear understanding that it was to be a partner, but to support the president, go out and connect with America and be that governing partner, said Cedric Richmond, a former Louisiana congressman and Biden White House advisor who was deeply involved in the selection process. It's not the easiest of positions, but it's a very important position.
Beyond the personal chemistry Harris and her team felt towards Walz, people familiar with the interview process said that Walz was also someone Harris felt could attract the kinds of voters that Democrats have lost to Donald Trump, voters that Harris may not be able to connect with on her own. He hunts, he fishes. You want to have a beer with him, said the source familiar with Walz's meeting. He will play in Michigan, Wisconsin, Western Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina. A longtime Democratic operative who has known Walz for years agreed, saying, he talks and looks like a lot of the voters we've lost to Trump. Harris had not been expecting Walz to say he didn't plan to run for president, a source familiar with her thinking told CNN. But afterward, as she sat around the same dining room table in the Naval Observatory, Walz's answer struck with her. That showed his willingness to say, look, I'm not concerned about my image or my approval rating or what's next for me in the next chapter of my life. I'm going to stay in this moment, be your vice president, run through walls, fight for the American people, and demonstrate our values, said Richmond. That's a strong and compelling argument.
It's great.
It's so fun. Like, it's a party of climbers right now, obviously, because
That's why it's refreshing to see someone that has no ambitions aside from doing the job that they're...
But the reason you have all this pent-up ambition in the Democrats is because the silent generation and older boomer generation has just had a grip on the control of the party for way, way, way too long.
Yes.
And so all these people who are like, I should have been way further along in my career by now, but these old fuckers refuse to retire, all have grandiose ambitions. And so you come across someone who's just like, no, I'm good. Yeah. I'll do the job. I don't really want to be president. Seems hard.
Vice president
You've got the job.
is literally just a notch on his resume at this point. It's a very illustrious resume, and it's just another thing to add to it.
Yeah.
And also his kids seem to like him, which is a rare quality these days.
That's another thing. Like, that's always interesting because so many politicians, you see like video footage of them with their kids, and it is awkward and weird.
Yeah, if it's not one way, like their kids loving them, it's the other way, where Trump's kids are desperate for his affection, and he refuses to give it to them.
Trump's kids feel like sycophantic employees more than they feel like children. It's very odd.
Yeah.
Like they could go on all day about why their dad should be president, but if you ask them like to name a single like special moment they'd ever shared with their father, they would be lost for words.
Yeah. So they also point out that Tim Walz calling Republicans weird.
Well, it's true. These guys are just weird.
And single-handedly coming up with what has turned out to be a very effective line of attack impressed Harris quite a bit.
Good.
Yeah. And in Harris's meetings with Shapiro, it sounded like they just didn't vibe all that well. Shapiro asked really specific questions about what the job would be and seemed to be kind of negotiating the terms of the partnership, while Walz seemed more down for just whatever she asked of him. Anyways, it seems like she made the right choice, and Democrats making the right choice is not something that we are all that used to, but we will take it. We're going to enjoy it. There's still 90 days left until Election Day, whenever we film this, 90-something days. And but it feels nice to feel nice.
Yeah, it's refreshing. Not used to it.
It is. I'm trying my best to embrace it. It's really something. But then you, like, even on MSNBC and CNN, you'll get like Andrea Mitchell or whoever being like, it's wrong that she didn't pick Shapiro. And it's just like, what is the argument here? He had a lot of baggage that was going to blow up in their faces.
Yeah, no, he did like that whole murder case that he sort of, I don't want to say covered up, but it kind of feels like it.
It would have been a bad issue that would have been repeatedly brought up. Also,
but yeah, people really were just talking about Josh Shapiro as if he'd already gotten the job and been fired from it is very strange. But all the worst, it's made all the worst people upset. And it's
like, he's very good at speeches too. And it should be pretty obvious at this point that people also enjoy someone who talks to them like they like
normal.
to talk.
Yeah, Josh Shapiro does a Barack Obama impression.
Yeah, which
is very obviously him. Same with Pete Buttigieg. They studied the Obama speeches, and it's an effective way to communicate, but it's not very genuine. But yeah, my favorite thing about the selection of Walz over Shapiro is that I think this represents a very welcome turning point where the Democrats have finally decided, wait, all these never Trumper guys that just showed up at our doorstep 8 years ago and started telling us what to do as if they fucking live here, as if they own the place. We don't actually have to do what they tell us.
No.
And that's mostly the people I've seen who are just like so dang upset about this are people who up until 2016 had voted Republican their entire life and moved over to the Democratic Party, but just want the Democrats to govern like the Republicans used to.
There was so much between flipping through the channels in the past 24 hours or so much critique being made about how he's too liberal or not centrist enough. And it's like, yeah, that's the fucking point.
They're the Democrats. They're the liberal party.
That's what we're voting for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very weird. You never see them talk
Even
about...
Democrats were saying that. They're like, oh, he's a little bit too
They're
liberal.
terrified.
It's like, don't you understand? That's what we need?
Yeah, the job of centrism is a fucking brain disease. The job of a
Also,
political
centralism-
party is not to represent the thoughts and dreams of every voter. It is to present a coherent political ideology that is inevitably going to piss off a good portion of the population.
Also, centrism is completely broken because the people who claim to be, it's moved so far to the right that it doesn't even represent any of the people who would vote Democrat.
I'm just glad that it's looking like we might not have to hear as much from those people going forward.
Good. But what they really need to do now is start outlining their actual policy positions and telling voters what they actually plan to do once elected. There's some good stuff out there already. The codifying Roe v. Wade. Yes.
They need to get specific, though. Mm-hmm. I understand. They've been busy. They've got a lot going on. But now is time to actually. Biden was going to try to run off of "I'm not Donald Trump," and that clearly
did not work.
It's a valid point, but you can't run on just that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and they're both no one has committed to the debates yet.
Yeah.
I mean, the
I don't think
Harris
they're gonna
team
happen.
has,
Yeah.
But the Vance and Trump team has not committed to the debates.
Yeah.
Even Vance today was saying that they hadn't been certified, so he doesn't know who he's debating yet. No, that's already happened.
Okay, buddy.
Sir. But they do have the DNC in 2 weeks. In the meantime, we can maybe get a glimpse of it from Tim Walz's record as governor. And for that, let's consult the Wall Street Journal's conservative editorial board, who published an article Tuesday ostensibly complaining about Tim Walz and saying he's a bad choice, but inadvertently providing a pretty handy list of cool things that Tim Walz has done in office. And this has been a trend in the past couple of weeks of Republican outlets.
This freak, this absolute liberal degenerate. Look at what he did. Like, wait, those all seem like, sensible liberal policies.
Yeah, those are appealing to me. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
So here's that.
Funding the North Star Promise Program, which provides free college for students with a family income under $80,000, including illegal immigrants. Creating a state system for paid family and medical leave, capped at a combined 20 weeks a year and funded by a 0.88% payroll tax. Mandating that public utilities generate 80% carbon-free electricity by 2030, ramping up to 100% by 2040. He's a fervent believer in climate action. Subsidizing electric vehicles by requiring EV charging infrastructure within or adjacent to new commercial and multifamily buildings, as the governor's office bragged. Passing one of the nation's most permissive abortion statutes that has essentially no limits and no age consideration for minors. Declaring Minnesota to be a trans refuge, with a law saying that the state will ignore a court order for the removal of a child issued in another state because the child's parent or guardian assisted the child in receiving gender-affirming care in this state. Establishing automatic voter registration and letting Minnesotans sign up for a permanent absentee ballot option.
Wow.
Got any more? I'm loving this. Keep them coming.
Look, I was already going to vote for them, but you can keep the excuses coming.
Yeah, I should have read that between sobs because they're like, oh my God.
I want to point out
basically Stalin.
One of the, at least like the tech bro side of the Republican Party is very, very focused on the birth rate thing. And it's so funny because they're actively working against a plan that would, you would assume, encourage more citizens to have birth, which is giving people time away from their jobs to raise their children in the most important months of their lives.
Yeah.
Apparently that's not an option to somehow magically increase the birth rate.
Why would a woman go back to work when that womb is now free to be impregnated again?
And here's from another Wall Street Journal op-ed. In November 2022, Mr. Walz was elected to a second term, and the DFL won majorities in both chambers of the legislature. In the preceding 2 years, the state had accumulated an $18 billion budget surplus. With the DFL in full control, Mr. Walz and the legislature have spent the $18 billion surplus on infrastructure, education, and other programs that will burden the state for years. They have also raised taxes.
Wait, what? He took a budget surplus and spent it on important things that are essential to the state, like infrastructure and education.
That sounds like stuff you should spend that money on.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that the state had a massive budget surplus, and then to use that on probably the best option possible is a rarity.
That's what you're supposed to do with the budget surplus. That's money that you can now spend on things that need spending on.
Yeah. Things that will prevent you from spending even more money in the future when a bridge collapses or anything like that happens.
It's very interesting. Like, they're painting him, even in like the more liberal press, they're painting him as like, oh, this like, he's basically Bernie Sanders. It's like, no, he's a Democrat who actually like does what he says he's going to do. Because these are all policies that they all like say they're going to support. But he actually went and fucking did it with like an extremely narrow majority in the state legislature. And they're like, wait, no, you're only supposed to like give a wink and a nod about that stuff. You're not supposed to actually do it.
So yes, thank you, Wall Street Journal, for pointing out all the ways that Tim Walz has been an effective Democratic governor while remaining popular with voters. Definitely wouldn't want someone like that second in line to the presidency.
No.
And if you were wondering how Trump is clapping back at all this newfound enthusiasm and unity from his opponents, the answer is that he's now reached the stage where he's just straight up writing fan fiction about still running against Joe Biden, I guess. Here's from a Truth Social post.
What are the chances that crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the U.S., whose presidency was unconstitutionally stolen from him by comma blah Barack Hussein Obama, crazy Nancy Pelosi, shifty Adam Schiff, crying Chuck Schumer, and others on the lunatic left, crashes the Democrat National Convention and tries to take back the nomination, beginning with challenging me to another debate? He feels that he made a historically tragic mistake by handing over the U.S. presidency, a coup to the people in the world he most hates, and he wants it back now. I guess he really misses Crooked Joe.
He straight up wrote some WWE shit. And then all of a sudden, that's Joe Biden's music.
He misses him.
Yeah.
He's looking at his picture. God, things were so much better back then.
I don't know if it's permanent, but he's been taken off the campaign trail.
Trump?
He's been dialing in to Fox. He's been
that is
out there.
Interesting. It's mostly been J.D. Vance out there.
And J.D. Vance has just been following Kamala Harris around. He approached her plane on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Just, hey, just getting a look at my future plane.
What a dork.
Yeah.
But yeah, things were so much simpler back then for Trump. And by back then, I mean 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That is how quickly everything has changed. It's kind of crazy. Just think about where you were 3 weeks ago, what your hopes and how you thought this election was going to go.
It is weird that when the assassination attempt happened, it was like, oh, it's one of those moments where we definitely shifted a timeline.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, the timeline we shifted onto is probably the worst one possible. And it seems like whoever was running the track that day, the trolley problem, they dealt with it in the correct way.
Finally, we get on the good track.
Yeah.
Anyway, all it took to get us on the good track was relentlessly cyberbullying the Democratic Party. It works, and you should always do it.
Yeah, we affected change, folks.
But hey, don't count Trump out just yet. Obviously, the election is still 3 months away, and Trump definitely still has some tricks up his sleeve. For example, on Monday night, I'll be doing a major interview with Elon Musk. Details to follow. It worked out great for Ron DeSantis.
This is the best possible idea, sir, and you should do it on X, the Everything app, through an audio feed that has absolutely no problems at all and gets 70 billion views.
It's one of my favorite Grim Reaper memes is Elon is the Grim Reaper, and it's Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, and he's knocking on Trump's door.
Yeah.
The man is electoral poison.
That's
and
right.
This is even like even in previous elections, like he's just he's wrong about everything.
Yep. Historically bad. I think it's great, though. I think it's going to be a real... If you thought the Aiden Ross conversation was brain poison, wait till you get a load of what I can only assume Elon Musk and Donald Trump are going to agree with each other about.
Yeah, and Elon is bad at talking.
Yes, they both are now.
They both are, but like Elon is especially bad at talking.
So yes, we do have that to look forward to, but that's a nice segue into more Elon Musk news.
No.
Starting with yet another example of the world's richest and weirdest man attempting to influence the election. Here's CNBC with an article about Elon's America PAC and a website they're directing people to with their ads. The website says it will help the viewer register to vote, but once a user clicks register to vote, the experience he or she will have can be very different depending on where they live. If a user lives in a state that is not considered competitive in the presidential election, like California or Wyoming, for example, they'll be prompted to enter their email addresses and zip code and then directed quickly to a voter registration page for their state, or back to the original sign-up section. But for users who enter a zip code that indicates they live in a battleground state like Pennsylvania or Georgia, the process is very different.
Rather than be directed to their state's voter registration page, they instead are directed to a highly detailed personal information form, prompted to enter their address, cell phone number, and age. If they agree to submit all that, the system still does not steer them to a voter registration page. Instead, it shows them a thank you page. So that person who wanted help registering to vote, in the end, they got no help at all registering. But they did hand over priceless personal data to a political operation. Specifically, a political action committee created by Tesla CEO Elon Musk, one aimed at giving the Republican presidential nominee Trump an advantage in his campaign against Vice President Kamala Harris, the de facto Democratic nominee. The PAC's efforts to collect information from people using the idea of voter registration is a critical piece to its plan to make personal contact with these voters. America PAC is focusing on door-to-door canvassing in support of Trump, said Brendan Fisher, a deputy executive director at campaign finance watchdog Documented. I think it is safe to assume that the voter data gathered through these digital appeals are going to inform America PAC's canvassing and other political activities, he added.
Oh, cool. Great.
I need help registering to vote. All right, give us a bunch of information about yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, and bye. No registration for you.
There's probably...
But we'll be seeing you.
There's probably at least some amount of people that assume that they are now registered. All right, it said thanks. See you at the polling place.
Yeah. Seems like it should be illegal, but hey, I don't make the laws. I don't make the laws.
It's hard to tell when Elon tweets, the other night that it's now World War time or whatever, the time for war. I don't know if he's talking about the government looking into him influencing an election.
He's talking about his custody battle.
His custody battle. Yeah.
He's talking about Grimes coming for his kids.
I think she deserves them at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, very, very cool, but we do have more Elon news.
No.
It never ends. This man obviously has a litigation fetish, and he gets off on suing and being sued. We can now add another lawsuit to the pile. This time it's Elon doing the suing, and his target is all those pesky advertisers who stopped running ads on Twitter when it became clear that Elon was just going to let Nazis spew hatred on the timeline with zero moderation. As Elon wrote Tuesday, "We tried being nice for 2 years and got nothing but empty words. Now it's war." Okay, so it's the potential election interference, and then it's his kids, and now there's also a war on the advertiser.
He's got a lot of things to go to war over.
Yes.
And he's going to war with all of them.
Suing the very companies that your business depends on for revenue, who you've been trying to woo back for over a year, while also at one point telling them to go fuck themselves, literally.
Mixed messages.
It doesn't seem like the most well thought out plan, considering it sends a signal that anyone who advertises on your platform is never allowed to stop advertising, or else you're going to get sued.
That is the implication.
Yeah, or if you just never did it in the first place.
Why would I start advertising on a website currently suing its previous advertisers for no longer advertising there?
Mm-hmm.
Seems like more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah. But hey, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out. I mean, I think the first piece of evidence is just going to be this clip.
Go yourself. Is that clear?
He told them to leave if they wanted to.
Yeah, he told them to leave.
Yeah.
He was very colorful about it.
Anyways, the lawsuit was announced not by Elon, but in a video featuring Linda Yaccarino, who clearly had some trouble with the question, what do I do with my hands?
Turns out, what do you do with your hands? Everything. You put on a, pretend, they tell you this in acting classes, like pretend the audience can't even hear you. Mm-hmm. Pretend you're performing for an audience of deaf people. How would they know what you mean by your movements?
Gotta use the hands.
So yeah, she's really, really doing what those hands
And she's
do.
got a cool free speech necklace too.
Yeah.
Very edgy.
I think this might be it's so funny. She's had this job for so long, but I think this is the most footage I've actually seen of her speaking and moving. It's always been pictures and quotes.
She is still, to this day, just a fascinating person.
Yeah. We love Linda.
I cannot wait, and I will wait as long as it takes to read that autobiography or a book written about her.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like she is actually a true believer. Her and Elon do see eye to eye on most things.
Damn.
Not everything, but
We gotta start checking these people's houses for mold.
yeah. How bad is this mold problem among the rich?
They thought it was gonna turn everyone into zombies, but it just turned them into assholes.
Yeah. So yeah, just on its face, this lawsuit seems frivolous. But what the hell do we know? So here's Rolling Stone with some actual experts' opinions on this lawsuit. This is a hideous joke, says David Balto, a Washington, D.C. antitrust lawyer and policy director at the FTC from 1998 to 2001 of the X-Corp lawsuit. The antitrust laws are a cruel and blunt weapon in the hands of someone irresponsible. They can do a lot of harm, but there's no conceivable way, he says, that Yaccarino and Musk can plausibly claim a boycott violation. It sounds like Elon Musk is engaging in a fantasy world of antitrust. Balto explains that the suit is totally inconsistent with past FTC actions, which are very limited. As the agency's policy director, he was the person who made decisions about whether or not certain actions were worth investigating and were anti-competitive, and he sees little chance of the suit surviving a motion to dismiss. Associations such as the WFA, he notes, have broad leeway to police products and make sure consumers are not taken advantage of and deceived, with years of precedent holding that this kind of conduct falls within a safe harbor and is not subject to antitrust scrutiny.
It's not a question of whether or not Twitter lost some money, Balto says. It's a question of whether or not Twitter was competitively disadvantaged by their actions. There's no evidence in this complaint that they were competitively disadvantaged. This complaint doesn't even get into the batter's box, much less get the chance to strike out. Moreover, he considers the House Judiciary report referenced in the suit to be simply a farce, saying, they didn't do any extensive investigation, and I don't think it holds water. He notes that the committee has done practically nothing in antitrust for a while, so this letter comes totally out of the blue. Other experts they consulted were less certain about the case, but it still sounds like it's at best kind of shot in the dark on some untested legal territory, though it helps that X apparently shopped around for a judge and jurisdiction that would be friendlier to their case. And even if it isn't, this could totally be just a lob it over so it gets knocked down and then we can play the victim again.
Yeah.
Like, do you see what the government bureaucrats are doing to your beloved free speech?
I mean, he's doing this in Texas. Like, seems like that's like one of the big reasons he moved there is because Greg Abbott's like, hey, Elon, we got judges that let you do whatever the fuck you want if you've got money. Mm-hmm. But even then, I mean, it just doesn't seem like a very solid case. And
either way, he wins.
And if he does like actually win the case, it seems like that sets a very like bad precedent for anyone who's trying to make money off of advertisers joining your platform. Mm-hmm. So, guess we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah.
But in other legal news, this week saw one of the biggest antitrust decisions in decades when Google was found to have an illegal monopoly on the search engine business. Here's the New York Times. Google acted illegally to maintain a monopoly in online search, a federal judge ruled on Monday, a landmark decision that strikes at the power of tech giants in the modern internet era and that may fundamentally alter the way they do business. Judge Amit P. Mehta of U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia said in a 277-page ruling that Google had abused a monopoly over the search business. The Justice Department and states had sued Google, accusing it of illegally cementing its dominance in part by paying other companies like Apple and Samsung billions of dollars a year to have Google automatically handle search queries on their smartphones and web browsers.
Google is a monopolist, and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly, Judge Mehta said in his ruling. The ruling is a harsh verdict on the rise of giant technology companies that have used their roots in the internet to influence the way we shop, consume information, and search online, and indicates a potential limit of big tech's power. It is likely to influence other government antitrust lawsuits against Google, Apple, Amazon, and Meta, the owner of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The last significant antitrust ruling against a tech company targeted Microsoft more than 2 decades ago. This is the most important antitrust case of the century, and it's the first of a big slate of cases to come down against big tech, said Rebecca Haw-Allensworth, a professor at Vanderbilt University's law school who studies antitrust. It's a huge turning point. Also another reason why all of these dudes specifically are very adamant about having a Republican in charge.
Yeah. The Republican FTC would obviously be a lot more lenient
They would let
this
VB.
kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, the Trump FTC is how we got all these media mergers that have shown themselves to be probably bad for everyone involved.
Warner Brothers stock has dropped to, it is very sad.
They're already talking about breaking up Warner Brothers Discovery.
David Zaslav, just, you can't do worse. So look, anyways,
It's big news, but while the government has determined that Google is anti-competitive, it has not determined what exactly will be done about that. Mm-hmm. That's a whole separate process. that also plays out in court, and it'll probably take a while, a long while. But here's The Verge talking with Vanderbilt antitrust professor Rebecca Allensworth and former FTC chair William Kovacic. A milder remedy, which Kovacic finds most likely, is an injunction that directs Google to cease the conduct that the court found to be improper. But even that includes changes that could range from trivial to seismic. Meta could demand Google modify its multi-billion-dollar deals with companies like Apple and Mozilla, for instance, which cement it as the default search engine on products like the iPhone.
Allensworth notes another potential remedy would be requiring Google to share data or even some search algorithm information with other companies. I think that has the benefits of directly addressing some of the stuff that the judge is concerned about in his opinion, she says. But Allensworth notes that courts don't like, for a variety of reasons, to force sharing between rivals. Whatever remedies the court ends up requiring, Google might not make them for a long time. Google has already said it will appeal the ruling. Appellate courts typically evaluate the liability and remedy rulings in the same proceeding, but Google could appeal a loss there to the Supreme Court, and it could seek an injunction to avoid any changes until the case is settled. Apple got a years-long reprieve from modifying its App Store rules in an antitrust battle with Epic.
So yeah, it's not going to destroy Google really in any meaningful sense, and it'll be a long time before this ruling results in anything at all. But in the meantime, pretty much all the biggest tech companies are facing antitrust lawsuits and investigations, sometimes multiple per company. And how things turn out will have a lot to do with how this election turns out and whether or not the FTC remains as committed to solving this problem as they currently are under Lina Khan.
Yes.
And there's even voices within the Democratic Party who are like, yeah, this Lina Khan, she needs to cut it out.
Those voices need to shut up.
All my donors are complaining that like they can't break the law. She's making it really hard. Come on, please.
I hope that this is a pivot point to where they just start listening to normal people and and they're like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
We've been doing this wrong for a while.
But yeah, she's like Biden's like best appointment probably.
Anyways, that's on you. You guys got to vote in November now. Now that everyone's worked up, let's fucking do it. In the meantime, we'll be back, but we do have other videos for you to watch. Thanks again for supporting us in this very strange, weird time that we've had on the channel the past couple of weeks.
Interesting time.
But thank you for that. It means the world to us. And we do have more videos up here, including an insane but true story that has been solved because he admitted a random dead bear cub was found in Central Park 10 years ago, and it turns out that it was just RFK Jr.
Yeah.
Just having a...
It's always the guy you most suspect.
Yeah. And then we also have the reasons why Trump keeps bringing up Hannibal Lecter, and maybe the reason why he's no longer making public appearances for the time being. Check those out, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.